Pravesh. Yeah, good morning all. Good morning. So how are you? So my name is Manjunath. I'll be ठीक कर दो. I think volume थोड़ा कम करना पड़ेगा. Okay? हाँ. Yeah, so my name is Manjunath. I'll be handling polity revision classes now. I think what all revisions is done now? Ancient medieval is going on. Okay, art and culture is done. Environment is done. Or agriculture. Okay, fine. Yep, so before starting, obviously you'll be having an idea. So what is the importance for polity subject on an average? How many questions do you get? Yeah, so just to give it an idea, because let's start with the basics. If you have seen actually in 2021, the increase, so you can, on an average, you can say around 18 were there. So it was actually a little more. So 3-4 questions were more. So 2020, was somewhere around 15, 19 was 13, and then 18 was also 13. 2017 was again another peak, because I think that was in the new syllabus era, that has been the peak. They have asked somewhere around 20, 22 questions that asked. It's a very rare case, you don't find it like that. So 2016, again it was the most, the least, I think somewhere around 6 or 7 questions were there from polity. Then if you make it like, let's say 13, 12, 18, something like that. So on an average you can say somewhere you will get around 13 to 15 questions fine every year. Because there is no way you can't, like let's say they can ask less than 10. If you have observed, especially from what, 18 and afterwards, especially you can say 19, 20, 21, these 3 years, so pattern has changed a lot. The reason obviously you'll be knowing, because in the last 3-4 years they have decreased the number of seats. I think by now obviously you would have understood that. This year it's a kind of advantage for you, because obviously number of seats it has crossed 1,000. So when, just to give it an idea, so because we'll get into the classes, don't worry. So basic point is, what you have to be clear about is, on an average what, somewhere around 7-8 lakh people will apply. So you can't give directly everybody the chance to rate mains. So then what is the intention of prelims? Because everybody studies basics, NCERT, sab kuch padta hai. So the basic idea is that one, you have to understand the objective of prelims. Similarly, if you have seen the UPSC notification, they also tell you the objective, that is what is the intention of means. Intention of prelims is actually, you can't give opportunity for everybody. That's why identify people who have basic conceptual clarity. So let them write the means. So that is the overall idea. That's why if you have seen any year for that matter, out of 100 questions, it can be a person who is writing first prelims, or it can be a person who is writing 7th or 6th or 5th prelims also. You ask them how many questions you knew. If they are telling, I knew more than 60, I knew more than 70, that means obviously they are lying. So because that is the max, how much you can know, somewhere around 40 to 50, like I am telling you, fair idea. Rest all what you have to do, based on your common understanding, broad understanding, you have to eliminate an option, you have to say, okay, ye nahi ho sakta hai, so there is a common option here, extreme words hai, facts hai, so this constitution does not support, this is going against inclusive growth, this goes against sustainable development, this World Bank can't do this, IMF can't, you have to use those, everybody will use the same logic, because the syllabus is so vast, so vague, so vaguely defined, there is no other way. So this 40 to 50 questions, maybe obviously Aditya sir or Tanmay sir would have also told you, sometimes they tell it is around 40 also, 40, 45 also. Actual game lies here. So if you miss out on these things, rest whatever you do. So yeah, मैंने ये current affairs पढ़ लिया, मैंने वो current affairs पढ़ लिया, actually it will not have huge impact. You have to be very good at this. What do you mean by very good? That means let's say they ask 45 questions from your basics. This will be mostly from your basics. To such an extent that you should be able to get at the max, like let's say 2 to 3 wrong. Fine. Your accuracy should be nearly, like let's say above 90%. If your accuracy is less there, and then you bet on, okay, I'll get it somewhere else, I'll get other questions right, that means you're already into a risk. So the best point you have to ensure is, make sure your accuracy is very, very high here. So that means what should I do for that? The core is obviously, if you have seen any paper for that matter, you take polity also 30, greater than 10 directly from your theory aspect. Fine, which you can solve obviously from NCERTs itself, and of course Lakshmikant, everybody would have studied Lakshmikant, there is no, you don't even have to talk about that. So NCERTs matter a lot, especially for prelims. Every year if you have seen, they'll ask, what is the relationship between liberty and law, what is the, that too they use words like, if you have observed, whichever one of the following is the most essential feature, the most appropriate definition, the noteworthy aspect. So they'll ask those keywords, you have to be very cautious about those keywords. So that's why every day my suggestion is, they would have told you by now, please keep always previous year questions with you. Do not just depend on some other, like let's say, what do you call as this, anything for that matter. Test series is for practice. You should always use previous year UPSC questions as reference, especially for what? One, to understand the type of questions, second actually to understand the language, interpretation. I think most of you will be writing in English itself, right? Or anybody who is writing in Hindi medium, something like that. I think most of you will be writing. So language matters a lot. So please make sure you keep on looking into that, because a lot of times if you have observed, so by misinterpreting the language, you will be knowing the topic, you understood the option, but you did not get the interpretation correct. So at least 4 to 5 questions you will easily go wrong there. So 4 to 5 questions का मतलब क्या है? So 10 marks, let's say 4 questions itself, 8 marks plus negative भी add करना है आपको. Around 10 marks you will miss out, not on your content, not because you did not study, because you did not get that interpretation right. Especially for subjects like polity, it matters a lot because they play with the words. So like let's say if you have seen last year, like preamble, I think 2020 they had asked the question wherein what is the relation, what is the most appropriate explanation of preamble, and then they told it is non-justiciable, and then they told non-justiciable, or if, or it can be implemented by implementing other parts of the constitution like fundamental rights, DPSP. Those options you have to be very clear. Fine. So that is where the actual game lies. Fine. Okay. So this is the basic, and for sources you obviously will be knowing, but my suggestion again, if you are neglecting or if you feel everybody will study, please do not miss out on NCERT, both democratic politics 2, one भी पढ़ सकता है आपको, but my suggestion, democratic politics 2, political theory and Indian constitution at work, please do not miss. You will get at least 5 questions directly from there. They may pick the definitions also. They would have already told you the logic. The reason is UPSC can't take a question from from any kind of book, because let's say they took a question from a book. What if in other book there is some difference in the definition or something else, and obviously when UPSC asks you to cross question all those things, that will become a huge issue. That's why they will always try to get questions directly from the official sources. So prefer NCERTs, don't take it for granted. Look at those small things. So glossary may, like let's say in box they would have given some definitions. At the end glossary of terms, then they'll give some definition. So keep a track on that. Fine, so that matters a lot. When we keep discussing, I'll tell you. Again, with respect to current affairs, use it. It's like necessary but not sufficient. Fine, they will not ask directly questions from, obviously most of you would have given, at least 1, 2 you would have given last year's also. You would have felt, I studied so much, I did not get anything directly from current affairs. The reason is they will never ask directly from current affairs. Like let's say last year, if you have seen, there was a question on what is the most appropriate definition of the term state. So actually, there was a case, if you can recall, in Delhi High Court which was going on, that is United Nations part of the definition of state under Article 12. So see, they did not ask what is the case about, is UN a part of state? What did they ask? Do you know what do you mean by state? They did not ask you what is the case, what is this. They will never ask those things. What did they do then? Go back, go to the core, let me test the students, do they know actual definition? And if you look at the option, can you recall that question, how close were they? Even if you miss out on single word, you will be like, Arey yaar, ye bhi same hai, wo bhi same hai, what should I go for now? So that clarity you should have. Fine, there was a question, if you have seen, like let's say last year issues were going on with respect to this Riya Chakraborty arrest, and then there was a custodial death in Tamil Nadu. What was the question they asked? 2 legal questions they asked. First one is what? What is the difference between police custody and judicial custody? Everybody knows Article 22, Article 20, this is what, punitive detention, this is preventive detention, this is what, this is arrest on punitive, this is arrest on all those things they know. Protection in case of arrest for offences, Article 22 and all those things. What did they ask? Do you know what do you mean by police custody, judicial custody, what is the difference? Do you know what do you mean by parole? So which obviously we'll overlook, right? We'll keep studying the basic ones. So that's why what they're testing in a way is actually a little bit of your curiosity. Do you know what's happening around you, and did you use your mind and clarify that? Not just studying from some material, that's more than obvious that everybody will do that, any serious aspirant will do. But do you have that curiosity? Not just to understand this basic idea. For example, some issue is going on with respect to liberty issues, fundamental rights issues, you should go through that. Like let's say, okay, what is this, what does constitution have to tell about it, is there any other thinker which is going on, so some other issue, that fact you should go through. Fine, you have to always make the best use of internet in that context. Do not just blindly rely on a material, because you will not get questions directly from that. It is just to give you an indication. Have you seen even in environment they do the same thing? You study entire one, what will they ask? They'll go to the basics of some biology, and then they tell you know, what is this, what is the, like last year they asked some pressure cooker ka kuch question was up. So like which material do you get that? You will never get that in any material, fine. So be a little cautious about those things. So use your what do you call as this, little bit of curiosity and all those things, and then try to work on that. Okay, we'll start with the revision process. Please keep noting down all the important aspects, so that, because in the last years when we had done all these revision classes in Bangalore, okay, even Bangalore students are watching because this is being live streamed. So those who had written down notes from APEC classes, they had somewhere around what, 40-50 sheets, like pages. So you did not again go back to entire ones. You can easily revise it at the end. So just keep noting down whatever you feel is important. Fine. So don't just say okay. We'll start with the basics itself. We'll start historical background, facts, we'll do it at the end. We'll start with the first chapter itself, that is your making of constitution. Now let's say, what if they ask the question, consider the relationship between constitution and democracy, and then they said written constitution is a mandatory, written constitution ensures what you call as democracy, all those things. So then what is the relationship? Or first tell me, what is the concept called as constitutionalism? What do you mean by constitutionalism? Limit the power of government. Yeah. So if again last year there was a question, if you have seen, the question was on a word called as constitutional government. So I think the question was, which among the following aptly describes what do you mean by constitutional government, or constitutional government is which among the following, something like that. The moment you look at, you hear either of these two, constitutionalism or constitutional government, the point that you have to search for is limitation of powers or limited government. So this is where you will have your question, limitation of powers or limited government. That is constitutionalism. Every organ should have a limited powers. So obviously if every organ should have limited powers, you have to divide that, and then you have to have a principle of checks and balances. They can extrapolate this term, and then also they may ask questions. But you have to get this word. You should search for this word, limited or limitations. So wherever you find that, obviously that's your answer. So there is no way they can't go beyond that. Fine. For this to happen, so many aspects has to happen. Let's say for example, you take the example of Germany under Hitler. Fine. They had a written constitution actually, but what they did not have? They did not have constitutionalism. Reason? What was not existing? Limitation of powers was not there. That means what they had actually? They had concentration of power. So that's the reason. The point that you have to understand is written constitution is a necessary and not, written constitution is necessary and not what, not sufficient. There are so many other aspects also which has to be, okay, I'll use a bit dark marker. What, is there a visibility issue, those watching online? Yeah, okay, fine. So written constitution is necessary and not sufficient, because example is this. Now reverse it. So you take UK for that matter. Do you have a written constitution? No written constitution, but actually what do you have there? Yeah, so you have constitutionalism there. Reason? Because there is limitation of powers. So written constitution is necessary but not sufficient. So examples are UK and Germany, clear-cut example, limitations of government. So keep that in mind, first aspect which normally you get a question. And if they ask the question, if they have a statement that Written constitution ensures democracy, again not necessary. Written constitution need not mandatorily ensure democracy. It is what? One of the best means that you can have to ensure constitutionalism and to ensure democracy, but not sufficient. So that is one aspect. Obviously, thoda facts, obviously you know that making of constitution. So first demand kept by 1934 M.N. Roy. He was the first person to demand an independent constituent assembly to frame the constitution. What is his ideology? You can link back to your modern India also, that is he was what? Associated with which party? A communist party. You can also actually call him as a kind of father of communism in India itself, because he was like, let's say, one of the founding fathers of that. He had an ideology also called as radical democratism and all those things, and he had also given a plan. What was that plan? He had also given a plan called as People's Plan, because there were so many 5-year plans before what Planning Commission framed it. So right from what? Bombay plan of the Bombay Industrialists, People's Plan of M.N. Roy, Sarvodaya plan of Jai Prakash Narayan, Gandhian plan of what Sriman Narayana Agarwal, and the Vishweshwarya plan in much before. Those are all various things which were there. Fine. That if you have just keep a track on 5-year plans also, because don't neglect that, it will not be asked. You never know, they may all of a sudden ask what second 5-year plan is also called as what Nehru Mahalanobis plan. All those things, keep it in mind. So don't take it for granted that this is an error of Niti Aayog. They may not ask, because you can't study Indian economy or Indian polity without studying 5-year plans. So keep a track on that also, just to have a broader understanding. Yeah, fine. So when did British accept it for the first time then? 1940, August of British accepted it for the first time. So that's your second fact. So we'll start gradually. Fine. But then obviously, so Constituent Assembly was formulated under, yeah, so obviously under your Cabinet Mission Plan. Now again, Cabinet Mission Plan. Who added Cabinet Mission Plan? Huh? Cripps added Cripps Mission. Lord Pethick Lawrence. So note down, because normally members people keep forgetting. So headed by Lord Pethick Lawrence. And then members included Sir Stafford Cripps also. Sir Stafford Cripps. And then you also had A.V. Alexander. So these are the members of your Cabinet Mission Plan. Obviously that was to a large extent accepted by both Indian National Congress as well as Muslim League, based on which they constituted the they created the Constituent Assembly. Where will be these people? They'll be sitting outside. Huh? Yeah, please, yeah. Because they are asking for, there's some visibility issues, I guess. If you turn off this light, I think it will be fine. Where are the switches for iska light? Okay. I think now it will be fine. Wait. You turn it on. Because I think there's some marker issue, or I don't know, visibility thoda issue hai. 1 second. Is it fine now? Yeah, I think it's okay now. So just check now, those who are watching online. Is it okay now, visible? Yeah, I think it's fine now. Yeah, no, ab theek hai. Yeah, done. Yeah, fine. So that is about your Cabinet Mission Plan. So then obviously, when did the elections happen, all those aspects. Elections were conducted in July-August 1946, but it was constituted in November 1946. Where did Ambedkar get elected from for Constituent Assembly? Actually, Ambedkar got elected from what? From Bengal, from Bengal. So that Bengal went to again the Eastern Bengal, that went to Pakistan. So then actually he lost his Constituent Assembly membership. Then again, so there was a person called as Jaikar in Bombay Presidency. So Congress asked Jaikar to resign. Then Ambedkar got elected from Bombay. Then he became the chairperson of this drafting committee. So those are all small facts. Fine. So okay. So just start with that composition of Constituent Assembly. Keep noting it down. So elections happened, or constituent, it was constituted in 1946. What are the strength, original strength? This was the original strength. That means what? In the original Constituent Assembly, that is before your partition, independence, all those things. So 296 was for your provinces, and then 93 for your princely states. Out of these 296, you also had 4 for your chief commissioners provinces. And what are those chief commissioners provinces? So chief commissioners provinces included Coorg, Ajmer and Mewar, and then you had Delhi, and then you had Balochistan. So these were the 4 chief commissioners provinces. Imagine them to be kind of union territories, so directly controlled by the chief commissioners, though had less powers compared to the governors of provinces. So those were your 4 seats, and then 93 princely states. Fine. So how are the seats divided? So this is the overall original strength. So how are the seats divided? Obviously seats were allocated to both of them based on their population. Fine. And then out of these princely states, how did they divide it? They divided between Muslims, Sikh, general. So seats from your provinces. How are the seats selected? I mean, from the princely states, that also you know, obviously very basic, nominated by the princes, by the kings, whatever you call them as. So how were these members elected then? From the Muslims, generals and Sikhs, they were elected by the provincial legislative assembly. Because they are coming from the provinces, they were elected by the provincial legislative assemblies. How? So based on PRS-TV with single transferable vote. Fine. Then who elected? It's a kind of separate electorate. That means members belonging to that community voted. So those who belongs to that community. Yeah, so the basic idea is what? First point, they were indirectly elected. 2, few were nominated. And even indirectly elected, that means what? If you have seen the words here, it says members belonging to that community. That means they can also use the term for that was what? Separate electorate. It was also a separate electorate. Fine? Not just indirect elections, but also separate electorate, communal electorate. So this is actually one of the criticism also, that what? That India's Constituent Assembly was not a truly representative body, because that itself, these members also were elected based on what? They themselves were elected based on limited franchise. Ye provincial assembly members are there. So how were they elected? That their franchise itself was limited, right? How was their franchise given? Voting rights. Based on your taxation, based on your what? Property, based on your education. So that itself was a limited franchise, not universal franchise. So 1919 Act and 1935 Act, all those things. So any words they may ask. Normally they are not asking question obviously from the Constituent Assembly and all those aspects, but you never know. Because they can always ask, it's been 75 years, so you can just get a question, just keep that in mind. Or at least they may ask a statement also. Yeah, that was your strength and all those things. And obviously so Congress got the majority, that's why it is called as what? Granville Austin criticizes India's Constituent Assembly as a one-party body in a literally one-party country. it is nothing but Congress, and all those things are there. So those are all kind of criticisms of your composition of the Constituent Assembly. So then logical thing, like how you have, like let's say when you have a newly elected Lok Sabha, so when they come into when they meet for the first time, what do? They choose a speaker pro tem, right? So senior most member will be made speaker pro tem, then speaker pro tem will give the vote for the members, and then they will conduct election for your speaker. Almost literally the same, because this has been a practice. When Constituent Assembly met for the first time, so who was chosen? So Sachidananda Sinha was chosen as the temporary president. Same aspect. Imagine them to be today's speaker pro tem. Fine. Then he conducted the elections, and then you had Dr. Rajendra Prasad elected as a president, and Dr. H.C. Mukherjee. In fact, you can add now, they have included, that is V.T. Krishnamachari also. So two were elected as the vice presidents. And then you had Sir B.N. Rao, who was the advisor, constitutional advisor, legal advisor to the Constituent Assembly. He was a constitutional or legal advisor to the Assembly. Can you recall, actually he was the person who went to, who physically went to United States and studied their constitution. He was also the person who had looked into this Hindu Code Bill. In 1941 itself, British had established like what we today now know as Hindu Code Bill, which what Ambedkar drafted. Ambedkar had a difference with Nehru and all those things. The original Hindu Code Bill actually was a kind of committee was constituted under this Sir B.N. Rao. So he was a very important, in fact he gave a kind of a draft also. He assisted Ambedkar a lot in drafting the original constitution. So all those aspects are there. So temporary president, vice presidents, two V.T. Krishnamachari, Dr. H.C. Mukherjee, all those things you know, and then Sir B.N. Rao, that is your constitutional or legal advisor to the Constituent Assembly. So that is one point. So now the team is ready, you have the members, you have the president, you have the vice president, you have the advisors. Then what they did? They wanted a unity of direction. That means you need to have clarity, right? What kind of constitution should you have? Obviously that was already ready. If you can recall, during the freedom movement itself, for a long time we already had a clarity. What all should be there, what should be the features. You had Motilal Nehru report, you had so many things. So the base was already done. So then what they did, so for that unity of purpose or for that unity of direction, you had objectives resolution. So they may give these statements, they will not ask directly as to who framed this objective resolution, they will never ask that. What will they say? What did your objectives resolution provide? Objectives resolution provided unity of direction. That means what? They gave a clarity as to what is the path on which you have to work. And who drafted it? And it was unanimously accepted. So why was it unanimously accepted? The reason is, already we had a clarity on what kind of country we should have. So obviously most of the members agreed with that. So that's why it was unanimously accepted. And that spirit itself is where you find today in, not the exact wordings, the spirit, the overall content, what do you call as the meaning, obviously you can find it in your preamble today. Fine. So that is the aspect. So then what happened? So actually they had created a lot of committees, but before that what you can understand is just to look at the chronology. So December 1946 it started, first session started and all those things happened. So then actually they had created what, by the time of Lord Mountbatten plan, or what you call it as the June 3rd plan, so which got enacted as the Indian Independence Act, all those things. Obviously a lot of changes happened. So let's first understand that change, then we'll go to on what basis did they make those committees. So what are the changes brought by the Indian Independence Act 1947? With respect to Constituent Assembly we are telling. What all changes?
It became a British domain.
No, the aspect of, I am not asking in general about Indian Independence Act. What changes Indian Independence Act brought with respect to Constituent Assembly? Features of that obviously we'll discuss about that. So changes brought by 1947 Act with respect to Constituent Assembly, I am telling you. So what happened? First point, because with this you did not just have independence, you also had partition. And can you recall that basic idea? That what, till August 15th, 1947, India was what? India was a colony. Fine. From August 15th, 1947 till Jan 26th, 1950, India was independent but dominion. You can say kind of sovereign also, but dominion. Actually, a lot of people question this aspect, but you have to understand this word, that India was a dominion, because we had accepted British Commonwealth membership, in which British Crown was there, and India was also still a British, nominally Crown was our head. So that's why till Jan 26, 1950, we were independent, sovereign, but then we were dominion. Fine. Then from Jan 26, we became not just independent and sovereign, but also republic. Remember, can you recall last year you had a question that what is India's status, constitutional status on Jan 26, 1950? Fine. They asked what? They used the words sovereign democratic republic, sovereign socialist secular democratic republic, because the word socialist and secular, they did not mention. Look at the wordings they use. What was the exact constitutional status? They are not telling you what is the status, because if the question is about status, India was always been secular from the original constitution itself, but they are not asking that word. Constitutional, constitution mein kya tha, that is the word. So on Jan 26, 1950, we were independent, we were sovereign, and we were not dominion, we were republic. So three keywords you had to search there. Wherever if you had found the word socialist, secular, you need to take that out. So very simple, but you need clarity, because they will not ask you directly these things. Fine. Okay. So next one, there is what changes brought by this 1947 Act. First point, what happened? So 389 strength obviously got decreased because you had a partition, and then it became 299 with 229 and 70. So 229, same thing for your provinces, and 70 for your princely states. Fine. Out of provinces, they may not ask, but just to keep it in mind, if they ask you, like let's say, out of this 229, who had got the highest seats? Obviously, who will get? Even today, which state has the majority of the members? Uttar Pradesh. So obviously, at that time it was called as United Provinces. So United Provinces has the highest. Second was the Madras Presidency. Third actually was Bihar. We may think it is Bombay. You need not remember this, just to have a clarity if they ask something like that. So just keep it in mind. UP had the highest, second was Madras, third was Bihar, highest number of seats out of the provinces. That was how the strength got reduced. So then what is the other change which you have to again, they may ask a question directly, though not from 1947 Act, that Constituent Assembly got two functions. So that is, first point is what? Obviously, first one is, which has obviously been there from the beginning, that is to frame the constitution, and second one is, yeah, that's called as to act as the provisional parliament. So why provisional parliament? They could have created a parliament, right? They could have created a parliament, they could have conducted the election. Why did they make Constituent Assembly as a provisional parliament? Yeah, that's what. Just elaborate a bit. Correct. So because to conduct election, first point, we are just in the year what? We are still in the year of 1947. To conduct elections, you need a clarity as to who will vote, who will conduct it, who will contest. So all those you need. What is the mode of election? Will we go for FPTP? Will we go for proportional? Which, and who should tell that? Who should give that clarity? Huh? Fine. So later I am telling you, at that time we needed clarity. To need that clarity, to have that clarity, what first you have to have what? You have a constitution, and the constitution itself is still not framed. So that is the reason they could not conduct elections. That's why they continued Constituent Assembly itself as a provisional parliament. Till when? So this assembly continued till you had what? First general elections. So first general elections was in 1951. November, December of 1951, and it came into force in May 1952. This was what? First Lok Sabha. First Lok Sabha, May 1952. That is the reason Constituent Assembly continued as a provisional parliament till April 1952 to make laws. Fine. And Constituent Assembly was made a sovereign body. That means what? It was given all the powers to decide with respect to what laws to continue, what laws not to continue, and everything. Fine. It had the power to repeal any act, to alter any act, to abrogate any act made by the British Parliament with respect to India. So, sovereign body means what? Alter or abrogate laws made by the British Parliament with respect to India till then. Anything they can take a what? Decision with respect to that. So, that obviously when the same body met as constitution making body, Dr. Rajendra Prasad presided it. When the same body met as a provisional parliament, who presides it? G.V. Mavlankar. You also have a very famous, he was also what? He continued as the first speaker. Here itself we can keep noting those facts because interlinks matter a lot. He was also what? You can write like this. Speaker of what I have just written here. He was also the speaker of the first Lok Sabha, G.V. Mavlankar. That's why you have a very famous rule called as Mavlankar rule. What does that state? What is Mavlankar rule? Mavlankar rule states that leader of opposition party will be given to that party which has minimum of 10% seats in the opposition in the house. That's called as Mavlankar rule. So if you don't know, keep noting it down. Mavlankar rule states, because he was a speaker, this rule was made in 1956 when he was the speaker of first Lok Sabha. Leader of opposition status will be given to that party which has more than or minimum of 10% seats in the house. Again, because if you can recall, in 2015 it had become controversy with respect to Congress, should we give leader of opposition or not? So how can India be sovereign when it's a dominion? Yes, that questions were there. Actually, a lot of people say sovereign is on Jan 26th, but Constituent 1947, this itself, Constituent Assembly itself, they clearly tell it will be a sovereign body because ultimate decisions were taken by us. It was just a formality sake, the Queen was there. So till 26 Jan 1950, not Republic. Yeah, of course, yes. Obviously, we were not Republic till 26 Jan. We will come to that aspects. So that is your Mavlankar rule and sovereign body. Yeah, these are the basic aspects. Changes brought by your 1947 Act. So then they followed the division of labor. So that is the entire Constituent Assembly, they divided into different groups. That's what you can call it as. They followed the principle of division of labor and then they created various committees. Just for your factual sake, you had various committees, among them especially just remember the major committees. You don't have to remember all, you can make it into groups. What are the committees headed by Jawaharlal Nehru? Union Powers Committee, Union Constitution Committee and States Committee. Committees headed by Patel. Provincial Constitution Committee and Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights and Minorities. This minority was headed by Dr. H.C. Mukherjee and this fundamental rights was headed by J.B. Kripalani. And very important when you are studying, especially for prelims, so don't study it what chapter wise or subject wise. Try to study it as a whole. That means when you are studying polity, whenever you get any fact, try to link it to your modern India. Yeah, this person had studied there, J.B. Kripalani, he was a kind of Gandhian, he had so and so role, he presided so and so session. So like that you have to keep linking. So okay, this is about polity, so what impact did this have on Indian economy? So mixed economy, all those things you study, socialist economy, all those things. So just try to keep linking like that. J.B. Kripalani, H.C. Mukherjee. So this is advisory committee on what? Fundamental rights and minorities as a whole headed by Sardar Patel, subcommittee headed by J.B. Kripalani, subcommittee headed by H.C. Mukherjee. Fine. So then obviously which one? Rajendra Prasad, Rules of Procedure Committee, and then Steering Committee. Union Powers Committee, Union Constitution Committee, and then States Committee. This one, Provincial Constitution Committee. And obviously, you know, the most important one, the last one was your Drafting Committee. Who are the members? Ambedkar, obviously, you know. So, Gopal Swami Iyengar, last year they asked the question on Gopal Swami Iyengar, can you recall? So actually, it's a very factual one, it's not so easy to recall. So, if you had public administration as optional, probably you could have got that right. Fine, because there was a the committee he headed called as reorganization of the machinery of the union government. Under that, he had recommended those things, which obviously is not so easy to recall. So, like let's say similar one, just to tell you, you had this T.T. Krishnamachari, who was also a member of your constituent drafting committee. So, T.T. Krishnamachari is famous for a commission called as Chagla Commission. Have you heard that? Chagla was a former Supreme Court judge. So, T.T. Krishnamachari was once the finance minister of India, union finance minister. So, there was a issue with respect to what, when he was this, there was a issue related to LIC shares, you know that there was some scam, there was a kind of financial irregularities involved in that. So, he said when T.T. Krishnamachari told, I am not responsible for this, you have to question my secretary. And then they constituted a committee called as Chagla Commission for that. Chagla Commission upheld the principle called as, that there is a principle called as anonymity. So, have you heard this principle called as anonymity in bureaucracy, which says that bureaucrats have to work behind the curtains. They should not take the praise, they should not take the blame. Fine, and then the commission told, you cannot transfer the blame for your secretary, you are the minister, who you should take the blame, and the Chagla Commission put the responsibility for the issue on him. So, what he did? He resigned as a finance minister, because anonymity principle was upheld, you can't transfer the blame, you have to take the blame. But he was also what? He was also, now he was not the vice president of the Constituent Assembly, that was V.T. Krishnamachari. He is T.T. Krishnamachari, one of the member of your Constituent Assembly. Obviously, you will be knowing. So, Gopal Swami Iyengar, who are the other members other than Ambedkar, chairperson? Gopal Swami Iyengar, Krishna Swami Iyer, Krishnamachari, K. Munshi, Madhav Rao, Syed Muhammad Sadullah. 5-6 members. So, I think you will be knowing. I will just list down the kind of initials. If you want, you note down, because let us not leave anything. So, Dr. Ambedkar, Gopal Swami Iyengar, Krishna Swami Iyer, you can say TTK, T.T. Krishnamachari, and then K.M. Munshi, N. Madhav Rao, Syed Muhammad Sadullah. Huh. Union Powers Committee, look at the name itself, what does it say? What should be the powers of the union government, like how you have, what do you call as this, union list, so what will be all those aspects you have to mention, that's called as your Union Powers Committee. Union Constitution Committee means, what will be the organization, you will have president, you will have prime minister, what is the relationship, what is Article 74, what is Article 75, are they related, those aspects you have to mention. So that's your Union Constitution Committee. So powers, constitution, states is what? This is the committee to negotiate with your princely states. That's why it is called as, and then reverse it. Provincial Constitution Committee means, at the provincial level, what do you call it as today's state, what will be the organization, chief minister, governor, who should be the head, nominal head, relationship between them, strength kya hota hai, how do they get, those aspects are all your Provincial Constitution Committee. Fine. So then I think this one I need not tell, fundamental rights, minorities, all those things you can obviously understand that. Yeah, so this is the aspects, and then they gave back the report and all those things you will be knowing. So first report and then second draft and then third draft and then finally you had, so first reading, second reading, everything. So 26th November 1949, which we today call it as Constitution Day. So on that Constitution was enacted, not enforced, it was enacted, it was adopted. November 26th, 1950. Sorry, 1949. Fine. Actually, there is a small clarity here, which you have to study only for NCERT for that. Like, when did the members sign the constitution? They mention the numbers as this. Actually, in some like Lakshmikant, if you have seen, they tell signatures appended. I mean, members appended the signatures. Actually, it is not this day. It was Jan 24th, 1950, when they met for the last time. That is when they gave the signatures. Small thing. So if they ask, don't get confused. Signatures was given on Jan 24th, 1950. Constitution was accepted, adopted, enacted, whatever you use the word, November 26, 1949. When did that come into force? That you thought obviously you know, because of the Purna Swaraj, remember? So as I told you, that's what I am telling, when you study that, link back. Okay, Jan 26, 1950, Purna Swaraj, matlab Lahore session tha, 1929, who headed that Lahore session, Jawaharlal, all those things should come to your mind. So just that timeline, Nehru committee, Lahore session, so that Bhagat Singh ka kuch issue chal raha tha tab, so all those, and then Karachi session, Sardar Patel, everything should automatically come to your mind. You can't study chapter wise or subject wise, study it as a whole always. Fine, one approach, what do you call it as the whole approach, so just follow that, especially it matters a lot for prelims. Yeah, at the time of when they accepted it, so what did it contain? Because here itself I will just clarify other aspects so that we need not go back. So when it was adopted, obviously you had a preamble and then you had 395 articles, you had 8 schedules, 22 parts. Fine. Now you have how many schedules? 12 schedules, 25 parts. First let's clarify this. Which was the part which was deleted? So part 7 is deleted. That was actually related to your part B states. Remember, in the original constitution you did not have it as states and duties. You had it mentioned as what? You had it mentioned as part A, part B, part C and part D. So that is, part A is as what you generally had British provinces, Madras, Bombay, Bengal. Part B is what? Erstwhile princely states with legislatures. That means what? Mysore, Hyderabad, those things. Part C was other princely states without legislatures. And then part D was your Andaman Nicobar, and then Fazal Ali Commission came in and then they deleted. I'll tell you when we discuss union and territories. So part C was deleted, sorry, part 7. The original one, even today you don't have part 7. So that's completely, that space is left vacant. That was related to your part B. Actually part D was also deleted. Fine. So that was what? Part D states means part 9. 6, 7, 8, 9. Part A, part B, part C, part D. 7 was deleted, it stays there. I mean, nothing is there, it's a vacant one. Part 9 was also deleted, related to Andaman Nicobar. In that space, what do you find today? Part 9 today is panchayats. That's why it is, though it's a original new part added, part 9 was already existing. So that's your part 9. So one part was deleted, so actually total number of parts will become 21. And how many parts are added then? 4 new parts are added. So what are those things? Just try to recall. (4A, 14A) added by, forgot, what's up factuals, added by 42nd constitutional amendment. 4A is what? 4A is what? Fundamental duties. 14A? Tribunals. 9A? Municipalities. 9B? Cooperative societies. So 9A is what? Added by 74th amendment. 74th CA 1992. 9B? 97th CA. Remember last year you had a case that Supreme Court annulled not entire 97th CA, part of the 97th constitutional amendment related to cooperative societies dealing with state level cooperative societies. And what is the reason that Supreme Court gave? that this needed amendment under 368 with ratification of 50% of states. You have not asked for that, so that's why they deleted state level cooperative societies provisions. At present, 97th amendment stays, but what does stay? Provisions related to multi-state cooperatives will stay, because that falls under concurrent list and the state has it's not concurrent, actually union list itself. Okay, just because we wrote 97th here, also it added article 43B, part of your DPSP related to same cooperative societies. It also added what? It also added the word cooperative societies in the article 19 clause 1 subclause C, freedom of association. So all those you find the word cooperative societies being added there. 19 clause 1 subclause C, article 43B as your part of DPSP, and then part 9B itself related to cooperative societies. All those are related to this one. Then obviously you know, so 8 schedules, they may ask a question, you never know, either a kind of match the following or they may ask which one was added. If you, I think in 2019 they asked about your 9th schedule, if you can recall. So what is the 9th schedule about? So I'll just list out all those things, so just note down, because you never know, they may ask about what is schedule 2, what is schedule 3 also. So try to recall what is your schedule 1? Yeah, states, you will find the names of the states and you will find the name of their territorial jurisdiction. You don't find mentioning of the what, all the districts and everything. So first schedule is just names. You will find the names of states and their territorial jurisdiction. And then similarly you will also find what? Names of the UTs, territorial jurisdiction. Then your second schedule, you will find the emoluments, allowances. First of all, what do you mean by emoluments? Not just salary, then they would have mentioned the word salary. Why will they mention emolument then? Obviously, right, if there was salary, they would have mentioned salary. Why will they mention emolument? Emoluments includes not just salary, it is your salary and whatever the benefits that you get in kind. In kind means, like let's say the president gets access to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, you may get so many other facilities. That's why they use the word emoluments for that. So salaries, allowances and privileges of who all? So just presidents, so reverse it, the role governor. You will find it our speaker, deputy speaker, Lok Sabha. Obviously you will find it for speaker, deputy speaker, state legislative assembly. Chairperson, vice chairperson, or you can say deputy chairperson, Rajya Sabha. Same thing, chairperson, deputy chairperson, state legislative council. And then you have Supreme Court judges, High Court judges, and then CAG. All those people, you will find this. Salaries, allowances and privileges. Fine. So then what is your third schedule? Oaths and affirmation. Then what is the difference between oath and affirmation? Yes, correct. Oath is you take it in the name of God. Affirmation is you take it, like let's say if you have seen oath, what will they tell? Ishwar ke naam pe shapat leta ho. That means what? You are taking it in the name of the God. Affirmation means you solemnly affirm. You take it in the name of your conscience. You take it your own, or maybe you may take it sometimes. Leaders take it in the name of the farmers, people of the state, something like that. Or sometimes they take it in the name of the constitution itself. What's up affirmation? Schedule 3. You will have your oaths and affirmations. And who takes the oath or affirmation related to what? Preserve, protect, defend the constitution? Yeah, only president and the governor. No minister, no prime minister, no chief justice also takes that word. That defending, protecting, preserving the constitution, that oath is, that specific words you will find only for president and the governor, only two. Obviously you know, so we will have it for, okay, we will write it for the beginning. Actually you will find it first one for your candidates. Candidates of what? Candidates contesting for parliament elections, candidate contesting for state legislature. Then if you become a member, members of same thing, parliament, state legislature. Then you can, after a member, you can also become what? Union, state. Then judges, Supreme Court, High Court. Then CAG, the watchdog of public purse, the most important constitutional authority according to Dr. Ambedkar. So those people's votes and affirmations you will find. Candidates contesting for parliament, state legislature, members of parliament and state legislature, ministers of union and state, CAG, and the judges of Supreme Court and High Court, you will find the oaths and affirmations. Then fourth schedule related to allocation of seats for states and duties in Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha, allocation of seats. And Rajya Sabha represents not just states, that is both what? Huh? Huh? No, in schedule 3 they have not mentioned it. Of course he takes, but that is not mentioned in your third, schedule 3, that's it. That is the only difference. So that is your schedule 5. So then what is, schedule 4. Schedule 5 and 6, that obviously you know, scheduled areas, tribal areas. So because that is also under discussion if you can recall. So Arunachal Pradesh had demanded that they include us under schedule 6. I think Ladakh had also demanded that include us under schedule 6. So that discussion is time and again going on. So schedule 5, you call it as scheduled areas of which states? So because I will tell you obviously when you discuss that, when you discuss this, always remember you can ask, always get a question on PISA, that is Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act 1985. You can also get a question on Forest Rights Act. These two acts are very important with respect to scheduled tribes. They may any time ask a question. If you have seen, there is a pattern for that. Always UPSC's focus will be on these things like a Forest Rights Act or Schedule 5, Schedule 6 or Panchayat Extension. Okay, so that we will talk about when we discuss that respective one. In which all states do you find that? You can group it. So you can group it into MP, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan. So make this as 4. Another one which has a separate one, you can make it as, and then another 5. So 5 plus 4 plus 1, you will have your schedule 5. Then you have schedule 6. That is, that also obviously you know, that's a very simple one because these are all very basic facts. You have it in your Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, schedule 6. Fine. So because recently Kasi Autonomous District Council was in news that they want to make a law to change what the property inheritance, that matrilineal property inheritance, they want to make some changes in that. So that's why that has also been under discussion. So schedule 6. And Ladakh is asking for it, Arunachal Pradesh is also asking for it. Like how you have in, so where in which stage do you have inner line permit then? You might have heard the concept inner line permit. So all those last 4, so that is Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram. Manipur is recently added. After all this CIA ka protest and all those things, they have added that. Earlier Manipur was not there, it was only MENA, Mizoram, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh. Now Manipur is added for that. So this is another one. Schedule 5 obviously you know, Schedule 7 you obviously know, I need not talk about that. You have union list, you have state list, and then you have concurrent list, who can make laws and all those things, basics, keep that in mind. So which subjects, keep that in mind. So if they ask concurrent list, which subjects will you write in that? Concurrent, broadly what kind of subjects do you find? Concurrent list I am telling. Union obviously you know, defense, international relations, what space, atomic energy, or what do you call as this, currency, railways and all those things. State obviously, Marriage, marriage related things, what do you call this, criminal justice, electricity, labor, forest, education, wildlife. So those are all your concurrent list. And then whatever is left out automatically will fall under your residuary list. And the moment they say schedule 7, the article that you have to recall is article 246 deals with your this what division of the subjects. 246. Fine. So then schedule 8, that is your official languages. So because recently again there is a demand by people speaking Tulu. So Tulu speaking people, you find it in parts of Karnataka, coastal Karnataka, western coast. So to just keep that in mind because you never know. So they are asking for that, and at present you have 22. So just to remember, do you find English there? English is not there. But you have Sanskrit there. You have Nepali there. Obviously in major languages you obviously will know. I am telling you whichever languages which we may get confused, only that I am telling. Like let's say you will also find Konkani there. You will also find Manipuri there. You know, Hindi, Marathi, Kannada, Telugu, Tamil are more than obvious one. Telugu and all those things that will not even mention about that are obviously low. And the recently added ones are, the recent ones, 2003 they added Bodo, Maithili, Santali and then Dongri. DOG or DONG? I think DOG. DOG are right, Dogri. So these 4 were added by your 92nd Constitutional Amendment 2003. So this is the major ones 2002. Huh? Hindi is there obviously. Obviously Hindi to hoga hai na. So you will find all those things. And then you had your 4 new schedules. So schedule 9 is where they ask the question in your 2019 I guess or 2020 probably. What is schedule 9? What is schedule 9? Famously article, which one? 31B added by first Constitutional Amendment 1951. Just to here itself, just to give a link, 31A was also added by 41st Constitutional Amendment 1951. But 31B you call it as what? 9th schedule. So what does it include? Does it include only laws made by Parliament? No, it includes laws made by Parliament as well as state legislature. But what is the common idea? That these will be, or you can say no judicial review. If you include those laws under what 9th schedule, it will not be subjected to judicial review. It will include, actually there is no subject matter itself, it is a very broader one. Which fundamental rights? No fundamental rights. That means any law which is included under 9th schedule cannot be questioned for violation of any fundamental right. Not this X or Y, 14, 19, not necessarily that. Any law, any fundamental rights. So that's why they tell the point that 31B in its scope is very broader compared to 31A. That means very broad because 31A includes what? 31A includes, when we discuss fundamental rights, I will just clarify then again. It includes only laws related to what? Few aspects. Like, you know, like let's say abolition of this intermediaries, acquisition of the estates, property managements, modifications of your mining leases and all those things. Scope is less. This one's scope is actually very broad. Fine. So that is the aspect. Again, the case that you have to recall with respect to this, actually that has the mains question with us on this. The case that you should always understand or keep that in mind is IR Koholo case schedule 9. So what did IR Koholo case tell? That even the laws we put under 9th schedule will also be subjected to judicial review because judicial review is part of the basic structure. But they also put a caveat, that is only those laws included into the 9th schedule after 24th April 1973 will be subjected, obviously you know because of the Keshwananda Bharati case. So only those laws included after 24th April 1973 subjected to judicial review. Fine. So that's your IR Colo case. Though there's another aspect related to IR Colo case, though a bit detailed, it's not necessary. It had included a test called as the dual test. They may not ask all these things, but some points may help you for your mains also. In IR Colo case, they had come up with a test called as dual test. That is, how do you test whether a law is violating basic structure or not? The first one is, does the law violate fundamental right? That is the first aspect that you have to ask. Second test is that fundamental right part of basic structure? Is that FR part of basic structure? Then if the answer is yes for both, then what do you have to do? Then the law will be declared unconstitutional. That's called as dual test principle of what? IR Colo case. Is the law violating a fundamental right? Answer is yes, then go to the second test. What is the second test? Is that fundamental right part of your basic structure? Then if the answer is yes, then you declare that law as unconstitutional. That was the dual test. Similarly, you have triple test. That was which case? Triple test is for your case Puttaswamy case. Case Puttaswamy ka matlab obviously automatically your mind should link it to privacy, because twice they have asked the question. So that is Justice case Puttaswamy case, right to privacy, Article 21. Even in 2021 I think they had asked the question related to this. 2019 also they had asked. Right to privacy is an integral part of which article? Article 21. Of course, it has links related to 40, 19, everything, but core Article 21. In that, they came up with a test called as triple test. That is, there can be certain restrictions or certain times when you can violate their privacy, but it should be based on a triple test. What is a triple test? First one is you should have a legitimate purpose to doing it. That means, if the government, if the state wants to compromise, dilute your privacy, first thing it has to be done for a legitimate purpose. There should be an intention, right? Second one is it should be what? Legitimacy itself. That means there should be a law. And third, the restriction should be proportionate. What is the extent to which you are violating privacy? What is the objective, what is the intention, the objective that you are trying to realize? Both have to be proportionate.
Sir, is it explicitly included in the Article 21?
No. Whatever Supreme Court says itself is called as what?
Because it's not written in the
Obviously, look at the word. Whatever judgments that the Supreme Court gives, what are they called as? They are called as invisible amendments to Constitution. The name itself says, I think I don't have to explain also. So whatever Supreme Court says, right to die with dignity, Aruna Shanbhag case, Hadia case, right to marry, all those things are all what? Invisible amendments to the Constitution. You don't find it explicitly, but it is considered as part. Because only what the Parliament adds or deletes will become part of the Constitution under Article 368. Supreme Courts don't have that power, because Supreme Court have the power for what? Interpretation. As a part of that interpretation, you have these things. They can't amend it directly. They can interpret it, that's it. Fine? Yeah, where were we? I think we were talking about Schedule 9. Okay, so Schedule 9, just because it was a link, I just mentioned these things, dual test, triple test. Obviously, I'll just recall when we even do other things. There should be a purpose for the state. This is what? Triple test for what? Triple test to violate privacy, violate or restrict privacy. Because you have this data protection bill, joint parliamentary committee is still looking into that, and then you have what? Sri Krishna committee bill, based on all those things are going on. So I'll just keep that in mind. When we talk about privacy, Article 21, I'll just give a link for that again. Because privacy means automatically committee that you should recall is what? Justice Sri Krishna committee. Yeah, B.N. Sri Krishna committee. Based on that itself, what is the bill that they are framing? Personal Data Protection Bill. which is not yet passed, but they have gone into details. So because I think just last month or just before that, the Joint Parliamentary Committee had finalized it. In that context, you will also have your right to be forgotten. So many things are there that we will discuss when we discuss fundamental rights. That's your schedule 9. So then your schedule 10, which obviously is very famous, simple. What is it? So I think all those things you can note it down. So schedule 10, anti-defection law amendment. Amendment. 52nd Constitutional Amendment 1985. And then 11th and 12th Panchayats and Municipalities 73rd, 74th. So that's your 11th and 12th, yeah. Huh? Triple test. So K.S. Puttaswamy gave for privacy directly. But you can obviously you can apply for all the fundamental rights broadly. But more specifically he told about this privacy. But actually that test if you use, you can use it for protection, this, that, anything you can use. Actually that's a very broad test that it has given. So please explain proportionality again. So what do you mean by proportionality here? The extent to which privacy is violated and the purpose that you are trying to achieve, both should be proportional. That means the objective is very less or very small extent, but then you are violating privacy to a very large extent, not allowed. Sir, but then who will determine what is proportional, what is not proportional? Obviously judiciary will determine because they are the interpreters. That will come to that later, Vivek. Integrated judiciary is federal or unitary feature. That when we discuss federalism, we will talk about that. So we have not talking about federalism as of now. Yeah, committees and all those things is fine. So then I think it's fine. Any other points left out with respect to the basics of that constitution? They may ask a very basic like which was the only provision or which was the provision which was accepted by the Constituent Assembly without any major discussion. Universal adult franchise. Huh? 33? Article 326. The provision which was accepted without any major discussion. That's why what? That's why some people call India as a perennial democracy. Perennial ka matlab kya hai? Perennial obviously you know. Perennial rivers and all those things you study. Lot of people call India as a perennial democracy because we have given the voting rights to everybody right from the beginning of our constitution. Because a lot of other countries they had to fight, women had to fight for a very long time to get the voting rights. But in India it's not like that. Obviously just because we have discussed that, here itself I will clarify. At present the voting age is 18 years, but originally it was 21, decreased by. So they may ask either on this, that universal adult franchise, when did they add, so at present all those things. Or they may link it and ask what is the importance of universal adult franchise. First thing is what? It is based on the principle of equality. Second thing is what? It ensures what? A kind of dignity for everybody. Dignity of common man, self-respect of common man. You are trusting because democracy itself is what I think in 2020 they asked this question. Democracy rests on what? That is UPSC has this trick of giving you a very broad interpretation kind of question. They don't ask you directly facts. Democracy rests on the principle of what? Democracy rests on the principle of the wisdom of the common man. So democracy matlab you should search for this word called as common man. Wherever you find common man, people, that is where your answer will lie when they talk about what? Democracy. Whenever they talk about constitutional state, constitutional government, what is the word that you have to search for? Limited government. Whenever they talk about parliamentary system, the word you should search for is responsibility. Because parliamentary system, what is the base? Principle of collective responsibility. You should search for that word. Like let's say last year they asked the question on which among the following is essential feature of federalism, something they asked. And they'll give 2-3 options which are more than obvious. You should search for that which is more basic, which is 100% needed. So independent judiciary, you have to search for that. So like that. Yeah, okay. So and democracy rests also on the principle of what? On the principle of popular sovereignty. So that also they can ask. Democracy's basic idea, popular sovereignty. That means ultimate decision making power rests with the common people. So again means the same, but they ask it in a different way. Fine. So UAF is also needed for what? Protection of the minorities. UAF is also needed for what? To ensure accountability of the leaders towards the common man. So these are all different aspects of or different reasons why you need universal adult franchise. I think the basic criticism of Constituent Assembly, all those things will be knowing that it's not a sovereign body, it's not a representative body, it was dominated by, and actually who was the, just for curiosity's sake, Nehru and Congress wanted to appoint another person as a drafting committee chairperson. Who was he? Actually, it was Sir Ivor Jennings. Ivor Jennings was the first choice of entire Constitution Assembly, not just what Congress, because Congress itself was the majority, right? They wanted Sir Ivor Jennings as the chairperson, because you might have seen his word time and again. They tell in Lakshmikant, have you seen that word? Sir Ivor Jennings called this as so and so. So Ivor Jennings was a very famous what you can say constitution kind of an expert, legal expert. A lot of people wanted him. He advised framing of constitution of a lot of countries, but then there were a lot of differences with that. We did not want another a foreigner to frame our constitution because we wanted an Indian to frame it. That's when they had a lot of differences also. Then they finally settled on Ambedkar, one for his knowledge, two as a symbolic issue. It's a message. Symbolically you are telling that it's a new India. That's why it is being framed by a person who belongs to the caste wise, the Hindu caste and all those things. So symbolically also you can send a message. So that's why for various reasons Ambedkar was chosen. Though actually what he lost his membership, then he came back. Okay, so those are other aspects. Yeah, enforcement, all those things is fine. And on January 26th, 1950, you also had what? Purna Swaraj, all those things is fine. 26th Jan 1950. What changed? First point, India became a republic, that we told. And here itself we will talk about republic, because let's not talk about that again. So what is the basic definition of republic then? Head of the state is elected. How? Not necessarily directly. It can be direct or indirect. And India falls under indirect. US falls under, US also is actually a kind of indirect itself, because you have an electoral college and all those things. But to a large extent, as at least practically you can say kind of direct. And what is the second aspect of you will not have any kind of privileged class. In other words, what do you mean by that? No? Singular sovereignty. Matlab, like let's say one person getting access or one family getting access, okay, hereditary kind of a thing. So absence of privileged class, or you can also interpret it as what? That the highest positions are open to all. That is the aspect of republic. Highest public officers, obviously which is the highest public office in India? Theoretically it is president, though practically prime minister has the powers. Theoretically president, highest public officers open for all. These are all various angles of interpretation of the word republic. वो भी है. So obviously not just that, any aspect you take, if you compare in a democracy, in a republic, every power, every position will have a limited tenure. You have to always go back to the public and then come back, because nothing is like hereditary which stays with you forever. Fine. And so these are all various aspects of your, what do you mean by republic? The basic definition is this, and then you can also have this. And on 26th Jan, what also happened? 1935 Act, 1947 Act repealed. Article 395, that was the last article. Huh.
It was repealed under Article. These all acts were repealed under Article 394.
Yes. Okay, you're telling that. So and then, but you had another one which is called as what? This abolition of Privy Council. So that act continued. Privy Council was what actually? During the British time, Privy Council was the highest court of appeal, if you can recall. So that is because that was, you had federal court and then you had to go to the British UK for the Privy Council, which consisted of the very close legal advisors of the British Crown. It functioned in London. So that Privy Council jurisdiction abolished. Fine. So that continued for a long time. So Supreme Court became the highest court of appeal. Okay, so that is the basic ones. So then what we'll directly go to parliamentary system and federal system, because that basics is needed. Then we'll come back to other chapters. So parliamentary system. Hot water, garam pari. Okay, fine. And are you guys taking mocks frequently? What is the scores at like aggregates? Huh? What is aggregates? It's okay, tell. 90s, 100s, 90s, 80s. Mocks ka matlab I'm asking like let's say typical UPSC ka type mock, not like subject. Polity 100 questions, economy 100 questions is a different one. That you may get 100, 120 also. There are people who get 150 also in that. 150, 170 like let's say in when the lot of people who take tests, they regularly take this. You might have heard in core batch, in this and all those things. There are people who get 160s, 170s also. But when it comes to typical UPSC type mark, automatically score will come down. 100, 105, 110. So that type of mark I am asking. Or you still have to know, sir, I'll take it in May first week, second week. Take mocks actually as frequently as possible. The more you commit the mistake, the more you can identify the pattern. Like, you know, you will always have a pattern of mistakes. Like that is most important to identify. Obviously, so they would have told. I'm just telling because everybody puts it in different ways. You should very importantly identify the pattern of mistake. But am I getting it wrong because of my conceptual clarity issues? Am I getting it wrong because of the factual issue? Am I getting it wrong because I am unable to understand the language and interpret it properly? Is it overlooking? Is it stress? Or sometimes what we will we'll think, "Arey yaar, UPSC aisa nahi pooch sakta hai," so UPSC is a very big. So we will think something else, and then simple question also will say this can't be, and then we'll give it to them. Because we will be under so much of pressure, and that's why we commit a lot of mistakes. That's the reason on the day of exam we will feel, so question paper is out of the world. Next 2 days we will feel, I could have solved this very easily, this was also there, that was also there, mujhe ye pata tha, wo, everything will feel. Reason, pressure. So you should remember Dhoni during that time and then try to handle it. So it is very important to handle pressure. So 2 hours handling actually determines, are you in 80s and 90s, are you in 110 or 120. So nothing else matters. That to the type of paper they are asking now, 2 hours matters the most. So be very cautious during the 2 hours and identify the pattern. You will never identify this unless you do frequent mocks. So every day try to attempt mocks, at least alternate days try to attend a mock. And don't hesitate, any mistakes you are committing, so that's absolutely fine, commit it now itself, rather than taking it to the last day and then committing it on that particular day. Fine. And especially now what happens, they are identifying your principles, the broad principles. Like they don't ask questions. Have you seen polity also? They don't directly ask you facts. They'll test your broad understanding. So you should have that broad understanding. Like, does the constitution support this? That angle you should have. Fine. And then they test your interrelationship. Can you interlink the subjects? So interlinking matters the most. You know facts, you have studied this, doesn't matter. Can you link economy to polity, polity to environment, economy to environment, environment to biology? Have you seen, like, let's say geography, agri, environment? There is no difference at all now. Do they have, are they asking you questions on earthquakes, on monsoons and all disappeared? Reason, They'll ask on soil pollution. Where do you put soil pollution? Soil is geography, pollution is environment. But where do you put, you can't separate it. That is how they are asking. Science, look at it. They are actually asking questions from NCERT biology. That means what? You can't put it under SNT also, you can't put it under environment also. They ask like that, very thin ones. We take it in a very silo mentality that okay, ye SNT ka hai, ye environment ka hai, but they interlink the questions. Then, and especially NCERT is again matter. Like let's say last year, you might have studied about artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, nanotechnology, this, that. What did they ask? Animal kingdom, so vaccinations ka basic things, they go back to that. So never miss out on, even NCERT is also I would suggest for science. If you have not studied, please study NCERT 8th, 9th, 10th basic also. Or probably of course sirs will tell, but my just a suggestion, so don't miss out on NCERTs. Sir, I had taken a vision test series, my score is 65-70. Okay, 65-70 ka matlab lot of effort needed. Sir, options are confusing, how to tackle them? Because one is conceptual clarity. Two, that's why revision, don't focus on studying too many things. They would have told you all these things, but that is what matters. One is revision, and two, think like an examiner. When you study something, don't just study. You ask yourself, if I frame the question, how will I try to confuse the students? So if you think like an examiner, actually you can eliminate a lot of things. So always try to think like an examiner, that matters a lot. Fine. And then revision 1, and especially basics. If your core is strong, automatic, have you observed even in your group or in your seniors, there will be some people who study for 15 days, 20 days, they go to interviews and then come back and then directly go to prelims and then clear. How is that? And you might be studying sometimes, like let's say I am telling you again, I don't know the exact demography here. There might be people who may study for 2 months, 3 months, but still they may find what kind of prelims pretty tricky. Of course, in general, prelims has become tricky in the last 3-4 years. Reason is your core has to be strong, and subconsciously there will be a confidence that array or mato I'll anyhow clear. So that confidence matters a lot. And handling those 2 hours. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Pressure is the biggest challenge for this. Like a kind of a World Cup final, to that extent they have taken the pressure. They play a mind game, like let's say the moment you go 10-15 questions, complete bouncers and yarkers, you will not even get to know what the questions are. Mind game. Just to play a game on your mind that, okay, this year is gone. So they want to make you feel like that. That is a trick. You should tell yourself, whatever it is, 40 to 50 questions will be there. Let me search for that. If you go with that attitude and you get accuracy in that, you will actually have a very, very high chance. Civils you can easily clear. Forest is a big challenge. That's another big game. That 2 hours has to work for you to clear forest. Civils, if you handle in a calm mind and tell yourself, I have 40-45 questions, let me first search for it, you will have a very high chance. But if you fall for the trap, okay, this paper is difficult, cutoff might be more, cutoff might be less, all those assumptions, if you fall in that first 15-20 minutes, huge, you have, that means exactly the trap the UPSC wanted you to fall, and you just bit that bait, that's it. So you should not do that. So that mind game you have to be very cautious. Yeah, I think most of them are telling either 70 to 80, that range. Sir, one last week mark, I got 33 marks. So 33, Pratyusha, you have to, but one exam I got 97, 89. Okay. Okay, so let's start with parliamentary system then. Every year, parliamentary system and federal system, 100% take it for granted, one question or at least 2 questions is guaranteed. Last year I think they asked both, one on parliamentary, one on federalism. So more than obvious you will have a question on that. So, sorry? British power in India. Then what, during British time? During British time, obviously they can do anything. Or you are asking today? Pre-independence you are telling. At pre-independence obviously, or you are asking like let's say definition of state, which is that? Not just independent, that means you are able to take any decision with respect to your internal as well as external matters. During their times, obviously British was sovereign, they can take any decisions. Which one? British, no, we accepted their paramountcy. They were paramount. Paramount ka matlab like huge powers, there is no unlimited power ka matlab paramount. Obviously they were sovereign in that context, but that was not a state under the definition of today. Like let's say was India a state during British time? If you ask that question, answer is no. Today India is a state. That will come to that when we discuss preamble and all those things. Okay, parliamentary system, you have it both at center as well as state. And what is the basis? The most important article they have to link. Of course, you can say Article 74, Article 75, Article 163, the most important ones, Article 164. And what are the different names for parliamentary system? You can call it as Westminster system. You can also call it as responsible government. You can also call it as cabinet government. And reasons you know. Cabinet government because cabinet is the nucleus of parliamentary system. Responsible government because cabinet is responsible to the, or executive is responsible to the legislature. Westminster because of the reference that you have the British Parliament located in that reference, all those things you know. Fine, they keep asking on these questions. What do you mean by cabinet? What is the most important function of cabinet? They like let's say 2017 that asked the question. Which among the following aptly describes the role of cabinet? Cabinet that it reduces the workload of these things and all those things. You should not go for that. Cabinet ka matlab what? You should always search. Cabinet should be responsible. That is the most important feature. It reduces the workload. All those things is what? It is all efficiency. Efficiency doesn't matter in democracy. In democracy, what matters? Always look for the words accountability and responsibility. So that is what you should search for. Well, okay, we'll discuss that gradually. So obviously you know UK is the mother of the parliamentary system, and then you have presidential system. Parliamentary system and presidential system, what is the basis on which they classify it? Based on what is the relationship between legislature and executive. If executive is answerable, accountable, then you call it as parliamentary. If it is not accountable, you call it as presidential. So basic ideas. So then what are the features of parliamentary system then? First is you will have your dual head, that is you will have one is a nominal and second one is the real. So de jure, that is president, which you can also call it as head of state, or you can also call it as de jure, that is jurisdiction wise. Head of the government, de facto, that means in fact, in practice, he is the head. That is your dual heads. State and government, we will come back to that when we discuss the differences. And then you will have dual membership. That is, to be part of executive, you should be part of the legislature. But there is an exception. Last year they had that question, I think last year or 2020. 2020 I think probably. That under the constitution, a member who is not a minister can have, or a person who is not an MP can also become a minister or something. And they tell clearly that pattern UPSC is following now. Just be cautious about that. Have you observed that pattern 3-4 years? They tell it is defined in the constitution, this term is mentioned, basic structure is mentioned, all those were there. Last year what they asked, constitution mentions the budget. Constitution doesn't even talk about the budget. It is only talking about annual financial statement, article 112. Constitution doesn't mention the parliamentary calendar, budget session, monsoon session, winter session, no reference. The only aspect is what? According to the constitution, the maximum time gap between 2 sessions should be 6 months. That's it. As a practice, we follow 3 sessions. It's a practice from the British. Constitution doesn't talk. 2020 I think, or 2020 they asked about constitution, talks about basic structure, all those things. It's a judicial innovation, Supreme Court. So those aspects, same like thing. So dual membership, does the constitution itself mention that you can be a minister without being an MP? Answer is yes. Which article? Article 75 itself says that you can be a minister. I think they mention it in different words, that a minister who is not a member of parliament for a consecutive period of 6 months, in simple words, you can be a minister or you can be appointed as a minister though you are not an MP. But how many months? 6 months maximum. Fine, recently you had Uddhav Thackeray example, Mamata Banerjee example, they were appointed as CM when they were not legislators. But they can come back within 6 months. Jai Shankar, so he was not an MP when he was appointed as foreign minister. Then he became a Rajya Sabha MP, allowed. Article 75 clearly says that. So dual membership. Third one, majority party rule. So I think you will know that, I don't have to explain that. That to form the government you should have more than 50% of the members in the, which house? In the lower house. In the Lok Sabha, in the state assembly. Upper house strength does not matter. And then the most important one, that is principle of collective responsibility, Article 75. This actually UPSC has at least 3 to 4 times like constitutional government. Very simple words, remember, according to the constitution, Council of Ministers are responsible to, that is, House of People. If the statements, if the question says according to the constitution it is responsible to, and then they give the options of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, don't mark the option Parliament, mark the option Lok Sabha, because the word that is used is House of People. So that's why be cautious there. Huh? COM, Council of Ministers. Individual minister is also responsible, but that is for the performance, that is principle of individual responsibility. 1 second. That is individual responsibility. Like you should take the responsibility for the performance or the non-performance of your ministry. Constitution doesn't mention about those things. He is responsible to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister will take care of all those things. And if he is not happy, 1 second, what is the time now? Okay, fine. Huh? Break. Okay, we'll take a break, 10 minutes. Okay, so let's continue. Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the House of People. So as I told, because some students were showing that question, search for the word responsible or accountable. So that is the first aspect that you have to do. And then you have to search for the word Lok Sabha. If there is no Lok Sabha and if it is given Parliament, it's fine. Sometimes what they give the statements that Council of Ministers shall be responsible to Parliament in general, Lok Sabha in particular. This also they may give. So it depends on how they want to test your understanding. So if that statement is there, obviously it's correct. Parliament in general, Lok Sabha in particular. But mostly what they use the word, they either, like let's say, I think last year, who showed that question? Somebody came and last year ka question tha kya or last 2020 ka? 2020. 2020, that what is the question? Parliamentary system means. Yeah, parliamentary system means they had given a statement, government which is responsible to what they have given? Parliament. So you have to search the word responsible. Fine. Sometimes what they will tell, they will only tell it is a government in which it is a system in which government is responsible to, and then they will give the option. In that context, you should search the word this. And if Parliament is also given, you should go for Lok Sabha. This was asked in 2016 or 17, I guess. So that very simple thing. So, but you will get confused. Normally, parliamentary system question will be only around here. This is the edifice, the foundational principle. They may also ask like this, which is the foundational principle of parliamentary system. So this is the foundational principle of collective responsibility. Fine. And that itself, and I'll just mention now itself, because rather than mentioning it in, I'm just linking a lot of things. Yeah, this aspect actually they discuss under your Council of Ministers. I am just, because obviously this is a revision class, I am assuming you will be knowing all those aspects. Principle of collective responsibility, you can divide it into two principles. That is, first one is the principle of swim and sink together, and the principle of Council of Ministers as a team. So these are your two aspects, two components of your principle of collective responsibility. Swim and sink together means you stay together, you continue together. Sink means what? The moment no confidence motion gets passed, you go together as a whole. So that is swim and sink together, and that Council of Ministers can also be dissolved by the President based on the recommendation of the Prime Minister. That also falls under your principle of swim and sink together. You can say no confidence motion, Council of Ministers entirely go away. Fine. And then that I will mention under that. And then COM as a team, what does that mean? The entire COM has to work together, you have to defend together. If you cannot defend your team, you have to resign. But the Constitution doesn't mention this. It's a practice, convention based on team means defend your Council of Ministers. Very famous example is what? Dr. Ambedkar's example. So what did he do? Huh? How? So I don't know that example. Recent ka? Okay, Farmers Bill. Yeah, correct. Oh, so that also. So Ambedkar's is what with respect to the Hindu Code Bill, because he had drafted it and it was very radical. So he wanted that bill to be passed. And Rajendra Prasad was the president and he blocked the bill. Nehru diluted the bill. So he said, I can't defend the bill. He resigned because this aspect. He was unable to defend the Council of Ministers. You have to, irrespective of whatever your differences. That's your principle of collective responsibility. Then in the same context, you can also say principle of individual responsibility. Again, what? Each minister is responsible for the performance of his or her ministry. Minister responsible for the performance. So if the minister is not performing well, who can ask him to resign? The Prime Minister can ask him to resign. And what if the minister doesn't resign? The PM can recommend the President to dismiss him. So reverse the relationship. How is the President appointed first of all? Minister is appointed by the President based on the recommendation of PM. Same thing. Minister can be removed by the President again based on the recommendation of Prime Minister. So that is how individual responsibility, appointment and reversal, accountability or removal. It is exactly the same. Fine? Okay, fine. Yeah, that is your principle of individual responsibility. Okay, so that is your collective ones and all those things. What is the next feature of parliamentary system? That is, you can dissolve Lok Sabha. But who can dissolve Lok Sabha? President only can dissolve. But again, how can he dissolve? Article 74, recommendation of the Council of Ministers, or you can say actually not just Prime Minister, the cabinet has to give that. Article 74 you can apply. Yeah, when? Before the 5 years itself, what is the ground? There is no ground, it can be done, so that is left to them. Politically, when do they do? When they feel there is a chance that, okay, if we go to the elections now, you will have a higher chance of coming back, they dissolve it. Constitution doesn't mention any specific ground for early dissolution. So keep that in mind. Constitution, because this is how they are testing in the last 3-4 years, does not mention, there is no specific ground for early dissolution. For early, no specific ground for the early dissolution. So that is, yeah, fine. So majority party rule, political homogeneity they tell, so that I think that you can understand, that is another principle kind of a thing for parliamentary system. Political homogeneity, because you will have, this comes out of the point that you have a majority party rule. So this is because of which point? Majority party will rule. So most of the members will have what same kind of ideology, automatically you will have political homogeneity. So that is the aspect. So these are your dual heads, dual memberships, majority party will rule, political homogeneity you will have, and then you will have what? Collective responsibility, dissolve the Lok Sabha. Of course, other ones you can add if you want, leadership of the Prime Minister. That's why some people call parliamentary system as what? Prime Ministerial system. Reason? Though according to the constitution, PM is what? Again, this is according to, he is first among equals, that is, he is primus inter pares. This is what? Theoretically. What do you mean by primus inter pares? Moon among the stars is correct. He is actually first among the equals. That means according to the theory, theoretical aspect, all the ministers are equal and PM is just first among the equal. This is in theory, but in practice, Prime Minister is very, very powerful. That's why they call it as Prime Ministerial form of government. Fine. So that is the aspect. Leadership of the Prime Minister. He is the leader of the Council of Minister. Any words they can use. PM is what? He is the leader of Council of Minister. He is the leader of party in power. He is the leader of Lok Sabha in general, unless he appoints other person as the head. So those are all automatic things. Any words they can use. That PM is what among the following? He is leader of Council of Minister. He is political head of the cabinet. He is what? Head of the party in power. He is also head of what? Lok Sabha. So any words, don't get confused. It all means the same. Fine. Yeah. So next one. Oath of secrecy and all those things that I'll tell you when we discuss obviously President and Prime Minister members and all those things. Just difference between this and presidential recall. So just reverse that. What are the aspects of presidential system then? First one, what is it? Single head, single executive, nominal as well as real. Both head of the state and the head of the government is the president. Second, reverse it again. Single membership, you can only be part of one organ, either legislature or executive. You cannot be part of two organs. Second aspect. Or that is, you can clarify it as either legislature or executive. Third one, No necessity, that is not necessary, that is all advantages. We are talking features. Not necessary to have majority, that is president, like let us say when in House of Representatives. When Donald Trump was the president, actually for 2 years Democrats was in majority in House of Representatives. So that doesn't matter. You may have a majority, you may not have a majority in House of Representatives, that's absolutely fine. So that's why we have written the word not necessary to have majority in what? In Lok Sabha means?
Could you please reiterate on POP?
Party of the power, sorry, what do you call as this? Leader of the party in power or party of power, anything. Party whichever is there, for that he is the leader of the party with respect to that house, not the party president we are not telling. So don't get confused with respect to that, it's not the party president. Leader of the party in power means with respect to its functions or anything with respect to the house, not for political purposes. That's a different one. I think what JP Nadda is the head, that's all different one. So that's different, this is different. So not necessary to have a majority in the House of Representatives. Fourth, what? No collective responsibility. They will not come and sit in the legislature, they will not be answerable, can't be dissolved also. Cannot dissolve House of Representatives. And the entire system is based on what actually? They may give this statement. The system is based on the principle of separation of power. Parliament, which is presidential divide. Fine. And that itself obviously you know who gave the principle of separation of power? Lord Montesquieu. In his work Spirit of Law, French Revolution, Lord Montesquieu, which is one of the basics, which is also part of what? What? Basic structure. So part of the basic structure, separation of power, very important one. I think last year also they asked the question, what is that? Which among the following is the best? What is that question related to liberty? Remember that they asked the question that which among the following is the best safeguard for liberty? Yeah, that was the question. I think they said committed judiciary, all those things. A lot of people got confused. What do you mean by committed judiciary actually? There is actually in government itself there are 3 types. With respect to bureaucracy, again just to give it an analogy I am telling. Remember in bureaucracy, same thing you can put it, in bureaucracy you have 3 types. First one is neutral bureaucracy, second step they call it as committed bureaucracy, and which if it goes much for what kind of worse it becomes politicized bureaucracy. And wherever you find the word committed, a lot of people interpreted that as committed to constitution. It's not committed to constitution, committed to the government and its policies. That means committed judiciary means a judiciary which is favoring the policies or the decisions of the government in power. Now can that be a best safeguard for liberty? Obviously no. So that's why separation of power was the best one. I don't know where were the other 2 options, but that was where you had the word committed judiciary. Committed means not committed to constitution, committed to the government or the party in power, safeguarding or upholding its policies. Right. So keep that in mind. That was liberty 1. Yeah, that is your parliament. In general advantages, if they tell, what are the advantages of parliamentary system? First one is responsibility. Second one is, just list out because a lot of things you will be knowing. Advantages of parliamentary system. Responsible is always should be your first one. Responsibility or accountability. So that is the first one. Of executive to legislature. Second one is harmony. Yeah, this also they can say harmony, or they can use the word cooperation, or they can use the word coordination. Between whom? Yeah, so this also they can use. Actually this can be a easy way of asking a question on parliamentary system. that which among the following aptly describes parliamentary system, and then they can give these statements. So be a little cautious. So that was another one. Third one, which they say broadly that it can prevent despotism, that is prevent concentration of power in a person like or in an office called as president. That kind of a thing you can prevent. Will that? That's a different thing practically, because there are so many criticism. It gives you representation to all the sections of society, because Prime Minister has to choose his team, ministers from within the MPs. Fifth one, you will always have a readily available government. In fact, in UK, what do you call that as? Shadow cabinet. But in India, we don't follow shadow cabinet. Keep that in mind, because in UK you have one major, you will have more or less two major parties, Labour Party and Conservative Party. In India, it's not like that. You have multiple opposition parties, hence it's very difficult for the opposition to form a cabinet, this kind of shadow cabinet. In India, in simple words, we don't follow shadow cabinet. In UK, they follow that. So that's why in UK they call it as what? Sir Ivor Jennings also called it as the head of the cabinet, shadow cabinet is also called as alternative prime minister. So you will have a, that's what. Leader of opposition means the shadow cabinet itself, the head. So that you can call them as an alternative prime minister. That's a part of shadow cabinet itself. Opposition will form that. So these are all in general advantages, and obviously you know that there are two aspects: responsibility, stability. You have to ensure one. There were a lot of discussions that we should shift from parliamentary to presidential. So many things were there. So we all have upheld it. So right from Surrounding Committee to second ARC to NCRWC to the Supreme Court, because parliamentary system itself is what? Parliamentary system itself is part of basic structure. So you can't change it so easily you can't shift so easily from parliamentary to presidential, because ultimately who has to agree then? Supreme Court has to agree. They have told that it is part of basic structure. NCRWC has told stick to parliamentary system. If you want, reform it, don't completely shift. So fine. So those are all various other aspects of this system. Yeah, that is your parliamentary presidential advantages. I think that aspects we have just written that. You reverse that, that will become your disadvantages. For every advantage you have a disadvantage. We will tell responsibility of executive to legislature is an advantage. Then what is the disadvantage?
They are not independent.
Fine. First point, automatically you can take a lot of things. First one, you will have huge instability, unstable government. You can anytime be removed by using no confidence motion. Fine. So that is one. Two, we will tell that actually you will be responsible, but not necessarily, because who will dominate there? Ruling party will dominate in the Lok Sabha. So that is why it is not so easy in practice to ensure accountability. Fine. You will tell that you can prevent despotism, not necessarily. You cannot. That's why some people call it as what? Prime ministerial government. Power may get concentrated in the PM or in the cabinet. So not necessary that you can prevent despotism. We will tell that what you will have a representation. What is the loophole? You will have an amateur government, because they will not be specialists. You have to choose from within the ones. Sometimes yes, you can choose somebody like, let's say, S. Jaishankar and make him as external affairs minister, but that chances are very less. Fine, because you have to choose. Most of the ministers will be from Lok Sabha. That means people have to choose. People normally choose as a very common man, non-expertise. Automatically it's very tough. That's why in 21st century it becomes tough to handle these things, because you need knowledge, right? But this knowledge you can't expect from a common MP. And then it goes against, they can also give that. Parliamentary system goes against the typical or what rigid ideal principle of SOP. Fine. Though that's why, like let's say in mains that asked the question that what, in India we don't follow rigid SOP. What do we follow? We follow, our system is based on checks and balances. We follow a kind of flexibility in the separation of principles. That also they can give a broad statement. In Indira Gandhi case, Indira Gandhi versus Rajanarayan, in so many cases they have clarified Supreme Court. In India, we don't follow rigid separation of power. We follow flexibility in the separation of power principle. Find that statement if they give, answer is yes. So keep that in mind. If you want, you can note that down, because this is what they are testing you, broader aspect. India, in India, we don't follow, India does not follow rigid SOP. Then what do we follow? You can use two statements, that is, we follow relatively flexible SOP, or most importantly, we follow what? Checks and balances. Huh? Watertight fed, that you don't have. Yes, that's what. Watertight you don't have means, watertight means matlab kya hai? In simple way, it means rigid separation you don't have. Sir, if Trump had no majority, then how did he become president? So you remember, it's a different system. It's not parliamentary. People have to elect you, that's it. Okay, can I erase this? We don't follow rigid and all those things. Yeah, that's your parliamentary system. Just reverse. Our advantages is presidential system disadvantages. Our disadvantages is their advantages. So just, and that's why what they tell, there is no one best system. It doesn't depend on the system per se. It depends on the people who run the system. So that's why any system can be successful. Any system can be a failure. So then let's start with the next one, that is your federal system. Again, the basic thing, if they ask what is the most important feature of federal system, then what will you choose? First point, you should have dual polity or dual government, and you should have, so these are your two most important features. Rest are also important, but when they give you all the options, you should search for this word. Like as I told, for parliamentary system, you should search for the word responsible, accountable, Lok Sabha, those aspects, or harmony between legislature and executive. Federal means you should have two governments, divide the power. That is the national government. You can call different names, but that is the core aspect. Then you can have other aspects, that what? These powers, it's logical actually. You should have two governments, national and state. Fine, names might vary. First, what you should do? Divide the power. Now, where should you divide the power? Where should you tell that? That's why you should also have what? Written constitution, to have a clarity in the separation of power. Because what is the guarantee that tomorrow a government comes and changes the constitution and says that no, you don't have this power? You should have a clarity, you should have a kind of what? Flexibility in that, certainty. For that you should write that in the constitution. What is that constitution is easily amendable then? For that first point, that is next check. First check is what? You should make it rigid. What especially, which features? Federal features should be, that's why, that's the reason, if you can recall, how do you amend your federal features of the constitution? Yeah, that is because it is very important. If you make, let's say you can amend, if you can recall, you can amend a lot of features under simple majority also. Then what if that was the case? If that was the case, then every subject would have become union list and concurrent list. Fine, because only parliament can do that. That is the reason they have done this. Then everybody first should abide by the constitution. That's why we follow the principle of everybody should operate within the framework given by the constitution. Fine. Then what if even if you have ensured this, there is no guarantee that they may not amend the constitution. They can still amend and affect the federal features. That's why what you should have then? That's the reason you should have independent judiciary. So that they will check, especially which one in Indian context. So that's why you call them, you call that as federal court, because it has that original jurisdiction of Supreme Court, all those things, and it is highest court of appeal, it is the guarantor of fundamental rights, guardian of constitution, ultimate interpreter of constitution, so many things you tell. That is the one, independent judiciary. That of course Supreme Court chapter you have, we'll discuss that. Then you should have in simple words, that's why they use the word that Rajya Sabha is to ensure what? Look at the wordings they use. Rajya Sabha's purpose is to ensure federal equilibrium, that is federal balance between center and states, federal equilibrium. So these are your core features. You will have a dual polity, national and center. As we call it as states, in US they call it as states, in Russia they call it as provinces, cantons, whatever, republics, sorry, Canada they call it as provinces, Russia, doesn't matter, the core aspect. You have to divide the power, like you have 7th schedule, union list, state list, concurrent list, who makes laws, all those things you know. Written constitution so that there is clarity, there is certainty, nobody violates that. Supremacy should be there, that's why just clarifying here itself, you can have three things. One is doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty. Which country? UK. You may recall that Professor Dicey's very famous statement. In UK, Parliament is so supreme, so sovereign that it can make anything and everything except make a man a woman and a woman a man. So that is parliamentary sovereignty UK. Fine. So then doctrine of judicial supremacy, US, and India constitutional supremacy. Fine. So these are the doctrines. So these are the basics of your federal system. Now obviously this is where normally they ask the question. If they want to make it a bit more, try to extrapolate it and ask it a kind of application based question, they may go to other aspects. Like what? Like for example, they may test you, is the word federation mentioned in the constitution? Word federation, if they say word federation, then the answer is not mentioned. But let's say if the statement say constitution provides for federal system, then answer is yes. So they are just playing with the words. Constitution provides for federal system, but constitution doesn't mention the word federalism or federal system. Fine? Yes, yes, more than obvious. Next point you can write that. Federalism is part of basic structure, landmark case. So many cases are there, but obviously President's rule, which one? Yes sir, Bommai case, 1994. Federalism is part of basic structure, no doubt about it. But it is not meant, the word is not mentioned in the constitution, but constitution provides for federalism, federation. So just be cautious about those aspects when they use the words. And then just to recall the basics, federation means you should have a treaty or agreement, basic idea of federation, fine. Or to go much further or much basic, you can divide systems into unitary system, federal system, and then so you can divide it into these three: unitary, federal, confederation. Unitary means what? As the name itself says, you will only have national level government. Even though you may sometimes have regional governments, they will not have any powers. All the powers will only be with the national government. So please change the markers. Please somebody call that Ram or what, Praveen his name? Pravesh, okay. Okay. Okay, so now only national government will be there. Even if state government is there, it will not have any kind of powers. Obviously, you know the examples. The best example is UK. You can say France. You can say what Norway. You can say actually China also to that extent. Even though if you can you have Xinjiang province, you have Fujian province, so many things. They don't have adequate marker बोल देना उसको. Unitary system, federal system. Obviously, the best, the first and the oldest and everything. US. USA and Canada are the ones you always compare. Confederation means what then? Confederation means you will have national government, you will have regional government, but it is not dark, okay. So in general, always understand in federalism, in general, national level government will have greater powers than regional, whatever issue. It can be US, it can be India, it can be Canada. To what extent it is more powerful, that might vary. In India it is more powerful, that's why we call it as what, quasi-federal and all those things. But in general, national governments have more power. But when you say confederation means what? Regional governments will have more powers compared to national government. That means, and in federation, even in India, even in US, states, that is regional units, cannot get out of the union. That is federalism. That is what? Regional units cannot pull out so easily. It is very, very tough, almost impossible. It can be either India or any US also. But here, easy to pull out. That is easy to get out of the group. At present, it is very rare to have confederations. US itself was a confederation before it became a federation. Fine, that means what? You had American Revolution, 30 weak states got together, at that time it was a confederation. Then they made it into a federation. Then it's continuing, right? And today you can say it kind of an examples are your UN kind of a thing. Is it mandatory for you to become part of UN? No. Anytime you don't like let's say US pulled out of UNESCO, I think what, Russia pulled out of which one? UNHRC. UNHRC they pulled out. So when they feel they pull out, that is what is kind of confederation. You will, and look at UN government, is it powerful? There is no government in such, even if you say a kind of system exists, it is not powerful, there is no strong holding authority. But in a federation you will have a very strong holding authority. That is confederation, in general regional governments are more powerful, easy to pull out, reverse it, it's your federalism. National government more powerful, cannot pull out so easily. The EU, European Union, UN are all those at present confederations. Fine, then yes. What is Article 1? What describes India as? Union of States. And what does that include? Or what does that connote? This is Article 1. India is described as a union of states, inspired from again which country? This itself is inspired from Canada. Find two aspects. First one, not based on treaty. Second, no right to secede. That's why we also call it as what? Indestructible union of destructible states. That is because of your Article 3, you can destroy it very easily. That we will discuss when we discuss union and territories chapter. So these are your two aspects, and we follow actually what? Not US form of federalism, because we follow Canada model of federalism. And also very basic if they go, why do we need federalism? Reason first, to accommodate diversity, because you have so much of diversity. If you create states, like let's say very simple is what? For example, linguistic based states, language based states. You have to create that. One is accommodate, two is what? You can have a very good administration, because one size fits all approach will not work so easily. You should have decentralization. Fine. That is, you can also say in other words, that is what, to tackle the geographical factor. Any big country you go, you will have federalism. Small countries you can manage using unitary system. Big countries is very difficult to manage using, because you can't understand the diversity and the problems sitting at, like, let's say what they famously call it as Lutyens Delhi. You can't sit there and entirely administer. It's very practically impossible with one size fits all approach. Fine. In that context, if they ask, there's something called as, if you might have heard, principle of subsidiarity. What is principle of subsidiarity? No, first tell me what do you mean by subsidiarity, then you tell is it based of cooperative federalism or not. Principle of subsidiarity means functions should be allocated to that level of the government which can do it better. And in other words, normally what we used to do was, we used to allocate the functions top to bottom. That means what? First center used to tell, okay, I will do all these things. So I can't do this, I will give it to state. State used to tell, okay, I will do all this, I can't do other things, I will give it to this. Now it's reverse. Principle of subsidiarity means what? This was earlier. That's what you call it as centralized planning and all those things. Today it's what? Bottom up. First give the functions to panchayats and municipalities. If they can't do, then let the states take. If states can't do, then give it to whom? Center. So principle of subsidiarity means allocation of functions, if you can write the definition if you want, allocation of the functions to that level of the government which can perform it the best. And it is based on what? They can also give it as this. It is, this itself is the core of what? This is the core of your decentralization. Democratic any words they can use, so don't get confused. Principle of subsidiarity is the base of democratic decentralization. Yeah, the old USSR, you can say a kind of federation. Yeah, EU, ASEAN at present, yes, correct. Now I am telling you the world, pre-1990s you had what, the Berlin Wall and USSR before that, that was a kind of confederation. Though it kept on changing, but of course it's a confederation. At present, United Nations, EU, ASEAN, SAARC, this, all that you can put that. That is the basis, and the indestructible union, all those things we can discuss. What all did we borrow from Canada? So that you keep that in mind. Yeah, so first one is what? Mode of formation. What is India's mode of formation? It is based on disintegration. First one is, we have borrowed mode of disintegration or mode of formation. That is, we started dividing big country into smaller groups. US, what they did? They started integrating smaller countries. Remember when US was formed, it was only 13 states in the eastern part, 13 former British colonies. Then they started to expand to the west and they started to acquire this Alaska and all those things. That's a different case. That's an integration. Ours is what? We kept on dividing. Bombay got divided into Maharashtra, Gujarat, Punjab got divided into Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, UP into Uttarakhand, Andhra Pradesh into this. So Northeast was only one state was there, Assam. Kept on divide. That is disintegration. Second, strong center. That is what you call it as what? Unitary federalism. Sorry, what do you call it this? Unitary features of federalism, quasi-federal, all those words they use. Strong center is borrowed from from Canada. Third one is using the word, advisory suggestion, all those things we are talking about. What did we borrow from Canada related to federalism? I am telling. The preference for the term union, they also borrowed from Canada. Other aspects are there, appointment of governor also you can tell. That is also kind of related to federalism. Actually, the concept of single citizenship also we have borrowed from Canada. But they tell it as Britain. From Britain, Canada borrowed it. From Canada, we borrowed it. Reason is, in Britain, you don't have a state itself. There is no concept of dual citizenship for them. Right? In US, you have states. So that's why you call it as what? You are a US citizen, you are a California citizen, you are a Texas citizen, you are a Miami citizen. In UK, there is no concept of state itself. Where did the concept of dual citizenship will arise? So, but in Canada, you have provinces, but still they follow single citizenship. Hence actually we borrowed it from Canada, though they technically tell it as, because we borrowed, Canada itself was a British colony, they borrowed it from UK, they tell it as UK. Okay, that's all different ones. So this is the aspects. And then obviously you know we have a lot of this unitary features. So just try to recall what are the unitary features of India's federalism and who all describes it as various. Can you recall the descriptions of India's federalism? First tell me the criticism, like let's say if they ask who criticized it as what? K.C. Ware criticizes it as quasi-federal, that means federalism in form, unitary system in spirit. Granville Austin calls it as cooperative federal. Paul Appleby, who was a management consultant of Ford Foundation, who came to India on the request of whom? Jawaharlal Nehru. Paul Appleby calls it as then what does Sir Ivor Jennings calls it as? Sir Ivor Jennings calls it as federation with strong centralizing tendency. Sir Ivor Jennings. And then Maurice Jones calls it as, this is what some aspects it will help you in mains also, of course they will not ask in prelims as to who called it as what. And then Justice Bay calls it as amphibian federalism. This was Supreme Court judge who during the emergency times, I think he called it as Indian federalism is what? Amphibian federalism. And then Alexandrovic calls it as, it's a sui generis model. Sui generis means it is unique. Do not compare with US. It is what? Designed to suit India's what challenges, India's needs. Those are different descriptions, and then obviously you know the unitary features right from single constitution to single citizenship. That obviously last year they asked that question, can you recall? With respect to citizenship. Normally they don't ask questions with respect to citizenship, but last year they asked. This is your unitary features. I'll just list out. So, and then first one is we have single constitution, but normally in a federalism you will have dual constitution like US. You have or we have single citizenship. Again in a normal federalism you have dual citizenship. Third, very strong center. They can make laws on lot of subjects, that is more number of subjects is in union list, more important subjects is in union list. Yeah, residuary powers. Ideally in a federalism who do they give residuary powers to? States, like in US, like in Australia also for that matter. Residuary powers to center. This again is which model? This is Canada model. Fifth one, Parliament can make laws on state list. But can the reverse happen? Reverse can never happen. Can the states make a law on union list? That's not allowed. You can at the max make law on a concurrent list. Fine. Emergency, obviously you know, I need not explain, or I will discuss when we discuss that. 352, 356 and 360, emergency provisions, huge. Fine. Next, you will also have All India Services, integrated election machinery, so here I will clarify a bit. Fine. Next one is integrated audit machinery. So what do you mean by that? So if you, let's say you take union government, you take state government, you can divide it into two again. That is, one is you have to take care of the account maintenance. Second, you have to take care of the audit. Accounts, audit. Now accounts is maintained by whom for center? CGA, Controller General of Accounts, CAG. But for states, fine, small thing, because a lot of people don't know these details, so that's why I am just clarifying. So accounts is maintained by Controller General of Accounts, audit is CAG, state both is CAG. Obviously elections, you know, you have election commission who conducts election for both parliament as well as state legislature. You have state election commission, but that conducts election only for panchayats and municipalities. Fine. So if you, obviously I think all those basics you will be knowing. For both parliament, that means what? And they also conduct election for whom? Of course, if you have doubt, you can also write Delhi, Puducherry. In case Jammu Kashmir happens, Jammu Kashmir also for a long time also. So all those things. And SEC, RLB, ULB. Huh? That will be conducted by State Election Commission or respective official based on the decision of the state legislature. So state legislatures का act होता है cooperative societies में, they will mention that. Will it be conducted by SEC or other people? Right? So these are all your various features. Of course, there are other ones also. The overall concept of the governor itself, right from his appointment to removal function completely. Reservation of the bill of the states to the, all those things are your, what, yeah, unitary features of federalism, Indian federalism. Then you have different types. So just recall your types of federalism. First one is what? Symmetric, asymmetric. What is symmetric federalism? What is asymmetric federalism? Huh? What is symmetric and asymmetric? Symmetric means, in simple words, all regional units treated similarly. Regional units का मतलब constituent units. They can use any words. Regional units, constituent units, components, all those things. That means states. All regional units treated similarly, same provisions. In India also we follow this to a large extent, especially with respect to big states, but the best example for symmetric is US, because to a large extent, again some changes will be there always, but US. Then reverse it. Fine, reverse it then. That means what? Regional units treated differently. That's why it is asymmetric. You are treated differently based on what? based on your needs, based on your challenges. Can you come up with the what examples for this?
Article 371.
Yes, 370 was also there. So now because it is abrogated, you can take this out. But yes, as an example, you can say 371.
Different number of seats in Rajya Sabha.
Schedule 5, Schedule 6, fine. So, though not mentioned in the constitution, the concept of ILP, though not again mentioned in the constitution, the concept of special category states. Yes, even like let's say the differences with respect to states and UTs. Within UTs, what you do? You have UTs with legislature, without legislature. Obviously, you know, with legislature, all that are your symmetric federalism. Yes, inequality in the representation, unequal representation of states in the, all those things are what? Asymmetric federalism based on historical factors, geographical factors, so many things here.
So unequal representation, will it be considered asymmetric because it is according to the
Population. Yeah, that's what. It is according to the population. But in Rajya Sabha, what they tell is, ideally, what they do here is, they compare with
Senate.
That's why they compare with the Senate and tell that, because you are giving states wala. Because Lok Sabha, what do we interpret it as? According to the constitution or in general, Lok Sabha is called as representing the people of India as a whole. Rajya Sabha means representing the interests of states and duties. In that context, some people tell that that can also be an example. For example, other ones are there. Like let's say special under 371 itself, you have governor of Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland. They have a special power to take care of law and order because those states had law and order issues, insurgency problems. But like let's say governor of what other states like Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar or Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, they don't have any powers with respect to law and order. That is also kind of asymmetric federalisms. Fine. And India is one of the best example. This suits India's diversity. Sometimes it becomes controversial also. Now you have mentioned 3 words here. I mean 2, ILP and SCS. ILP is what? As I told just now, Mizoram, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur. So all the 4 states. Where is it mentioned? ILP is mentioned in the constitution or not? Constitution doesn't talk about that. If you don't know, write that act. It was a British legacy, Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act. Yes, 1873, correct. Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act, 1873. So it was a old provision. Mizoram, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh and Manipur, Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act 1873. So what is the provision of ILP then? You should take a permission from the respective officer of the state government. For whom? For the non-natives of India, Indian citizens itself, but non-natives of those states. Fine. So this is for not the foreigners, don't get confused. Non-native but Indian citizens. You have to take a permission from whom? From the respective, normally DC or Tehsildar ka AC kind of a thing, that state governments will tell, you should take a permission. Normally the entry time is around 40-50 days. So 50 days you can enter. After that you have to come back. When you enter, you can't take religious books. When you come out, you can't come up with religious books. You cannot go there and stay there. You cannot get married there so easily. There are a lot of restrictions for that. So property buying not allowed. Fine, no property buying. You just have to go there. For whatsoever, central government officers are all different things. Government itself will give you permissions. We are talking about as a general person if you want to enter. That is the concept of ILP. State government, constitution doesn't talk about it. Recently extended to which one? Manipur, recent ones. Then what is special category status? Who used to give it? National Development Council. As of now, post 14th Finance Commission, the concept of special category status is no or has no relevance at all. This is special category status. You can say based on first, when was it introduced? Based on 5th Finance Commission report. Fine. What are the criteria on which special category status was given? There has to be a lot of criterias. Normal ones was, first one is what? Tough terrain. Yeah, tough geography. Lot of hills, lot of rivers, infrastructural problem. Next one is international borders, because it gets difficult for development. Third one is high scheduled tribe population. Fine. Infrastructure problem. Fine. Then low SDGDP. SGDP. That means industries are less, this is less, service sector is less, contribution of GDP is less. Fine. Which states were given then? They had, when did it become controversial? When it was promised for Andhra Pradesh under Andhra Pradesh States Reorganization Act 2014 and it was not given, then it became controversial. Literally you can say at present the concept is irrelevant post 14th Finance Commission. Fine, because more devolution has happened, vertical devolution. So you don't have to even worry about the concept. That is your special category status NDC. 371 is different, that's obviously there. That's a special provisions given to some states or part of the states. Then that's why I think recently what Government of India gave for Andhra Pradesh specifically, they gave a concept called as SAM, Special Assistant Measure. They are not calling it a special category. And what are the advantages of SCS? The advantages was mostly financial. That means we will reduce the income tax, we will reduce the corporate tax. Yeah, any clarification needed? Huh? So most of the advantages were financial. That means reductions or exemptions in the taxations, and like for example, under special category, sorry, not special category, you have centrally sponsored schemes. Normally, can you recall 60-40, 70-30, you have that. For these states, it used to be 90-10. Even that 10 was given as loans by the Government of India with 0% interest. That means what? You just have to give it back without any interest. Fine, to that extent it was given. Yeah, that is one type. That is what? Asymmetric federalism. Symmetric, asymmetric. Then obviously you have three other ones. Cooperative, competitive, you can also say confrontational, bargaining. So these are all various types of federalism that you have. Competitive, cooperative, so yeah, what do you call as the next one? Confrontational, bargaining. Competitive means what? Again you can divide it, subdivide. You can have what? Vertical cooperation, you can have horizontal cooperation. Vertical means so that is the principle, the ideal that we have to follow. Cooperative. Center and state should keep cooperating with each other. What are the examples at present for cooperative federalism? Niti Aayog, correct. Then GST Council, good. Then yeah, interstate council also kind of tries to support that. Zonal councils also kind of tries to support that. Correct ones. Those are all good examples for your cooperative federalism. For example, what this we shared these vaccines, we shared these oxygen cylinders, all those things are best examples for cooperative federalism. Then what are the examples for competitive federalism? Aspirational districts program, they are that in a way also competitive, yeah, correct then? Yes, yes, correct. That is, for example, they have their own this gym, so they call it as global investors meet and all those things they do, they try to attract investments. They very simple examples are what? Niti Aayog gives a lot of ranks, Swachh Bharat ranks, what do you call Swachh Bharat rank is given by, I think, what, Mohua, so, and all those things. So you have this composite water management index ranks, good governance index rank, SDG ranks, yeah, correct, bataiye. SDG index, good governance index, all those are competitive. You are trying to promote competition between the states, sometimes between center and the state. Model laws, so like let's say model laws on labor, land, so many things are there, those are all competitive federalisms, fine. Post 1991, this has increased a lot, competition, fine. In a way it is good because you are trying to ease of doing business and all those things, you are trying to work better. In a way it is bad because post 1991 private sector is playing greater role, hence disparities, regional imbalances are increasing. So in the post 1991 era, private sector. Yeah, so that is, I think that's fine, competitive federalism. Did you note down the examples, or I think you can have those things. Then what is confrontational? Because this question you had in mains 2021 or 2020, I think 2020 probably, that Indian federalism has moved from cooperative, competitive to confrontational over a period. So what is confrontational then? Water disputes, border disputes, Kerala telling that we will not implement CAA, West Bengal telling that we will not allow CBI to function, Chhattisgarh telling we will not allow NIA to function, those are all confrontation. GST compensation mein thoda, some issue was there that no, we can't compensate this, that, those are all confrontation. You're targeting West Bengal. Okay, so they will not like that then. Huh? Which one? Not implementing means it's in a way, understand what you are trying to say. It is there, sir, they can take their call and all those things. Huh? No, bargaining, it will become a because the point is, in a way, understand. So what you are trying to say, so what will happen is there is a kind of political differences, ideological differences that leads to this kind of conflict. For example, like let's say recently what Tamil Nadu said that we will not implement NEP, National Education Policy, and what is their argument? First point, education is in concurrent list. So that means what? Both can make laws or policies related to that. Two, what is the reasoning they told? NEP is a policy, it's not a law. But what if it was passed by the parliament? Then states have no option, because a law passed by the parliament has to be implemented by the states. You may not agree with that. Like let's say if the statement says, in the context of this Kerala telling that we will not implement CAA, does the constitution support that? Constitution doesn't support that. What did they tell? They passed a resolution in the assembly. They are not saying that we will not implement it. They are expressing their dissatisfaction, that's it. So that aspect you have to understand. For your thing, actually you can, to a large extent, you can put it under confrontation because of the ideological, political differences. Bargaining, what you can say, for example, you argue with them and then you try to, balance this, balance that, everything, that's a different one. For example, earlier planning commission, we used to depend a lot on planning commission for everything. Go bargain, so just try to get more money and all those things. Sometimes what we do, they may give you more money to contribute. Those are all kind of bargaining. Confrontation, why we have to put is, because there is political, ideological factors involved here. Either because of the personality conflict between PM and CM, or some ideology differences between central party and the state party. If you have that, someday you can also argue in mains that you can also put it here. In prelims, they will not ask you what is this. They will ask you what is the definition. If they ask, I think in 20 they asked about cooperative federalism means or something they asked, or Sarkariya Commission supported, so on, so on those lines they ask, that's it. So just get an idea for that. So that's your bargaining federalism. Center and states, especially states, forced to depend on the center for everything. Like for a long extent, states used to depend on center. For example, planning commission kind of an era. Now what has happened? Remember that Teesta water agreement. So West Bengal told, so if you try to implement that, I will pull out. So center compromised, bargaining federalism. Fine, compromised. There is not just a confrontation. Like let's say for example, remember that Karunanidhi told that if Prime Minister attends the Commonwealth Heads of Meeting in Sri Lanka, the DMK will pull out of UPA. Prime Minister did not attend, compromise. That is, so here you can put it as bargaining means there should be a kind of what? Compromising aspect. Earlier who used to compromise a lot? States used to compromise a lot with center. In the era of coalition government, actually it has what? Reversed it. Now it's again a kind of reverse, because we are in an era of majority government now. So states to a large extent has to depend on the center now. So it's all different ways of what federalism taking up different turns, different angles. Yeah, I think that is federalism angles. Any other points that we have to discuss on federalism? How else do they ask? Mostly on these angles. What is the time? When is your next class? 2 o'clock. Okay. Yeah. So then I think what from can we continue another 10 minutes or you need 1:30 we can continue. Okay, so what is next one? ज़्यादा हो गया. Okay, so don't worry. So you don't feel that we are just discussing through a lot of aspects. I try to interlink because that is what is my understanding. They don't ask it chapter wise. They interlink a lot of things. In fact, actually, when I keep telling, I'll try to link with modern India economy, but I may not tell all those details. But I'll give you a link. When you go back and study, you ask yourself, okay, yaar, iska economic ka links kya hai, iska geographical links kya hai, environment ka links kya hai, all those things you try to recall. So in your mind automatically. Fine? Yeah, is that fine? So pace, is that okay? Or a little bit fast? Or over dumping? Even if it is dumped, it's fine because that's needed. Okay, thank you. We'll meet tomorrow.